Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf, which is Pesachim Daf Yud Aleph. We are on Yud Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom, and in the midst of a discussion between Rabbi Yehuda, who says that one may not do B'dikas Chametz past Chatzos and Erev Pesach because there's a concern that if he's going to be involved in Chametz, he might actually eat that Chametz. Whereas the Chacham don't have that Gzera, go ahead, do B'dika. If you forgot to do it before, do it after Chatzos. There's no such concern. Says the Gemara, Umi Gaza Rabbi Yehuda, Dilma Asi L'meicha Minei. Is a Rabbi Yehuda Geiza, does he have that concern that perhaps a person will accidentally eat the Chametz that he's involved with? But we learned in the Mishnah, which seems to indicate otherwise. Mishnah says once the Minchas Omer was brought on the Mizbeach on Pesach, and that allows you to actually begin eating from the new grains, from the new crop. Yoitzin u'moitzin, they would go out and find Shukei Yerushalayim, the markets of Yerushalayim, Shem Maleim, Kemach v'koli, filled with flour and roasted grains. And apparently they prepared the grains before the Omer was actually offered on his Mizbeach. So they were engaged in processing the grains when they were still Aser. Let's see Rashi, 4 lines from the bottom. That very day that they brought the carbon, Yoitzim u'moitzim Shuk Yerushalayim, they'll go and find the marketplaces of Yerushalayim, Maleim, Kemach v'koli, Menachadish. The shelves were stocked with new produce, limkar for sale. The koidim yontif niktaf, apparently it was picked before yontif, v'nitchan, and ground, v'nisyabish koli betaner, and roasted in the oven. So this was the fact, says the Gemara, but it was shaloi b'ritzayin chachamim. Rameh maintains that it was not done with the consent and approval of the chachamim. Why? Says Rashi up on top, shaloi b'ritzayin chachamim. There's room for gzera, for concern. Dilma kime askibe. When they're involved in processing this grain, he might actually come to eat from it. In which case, it's also because it's still before the akrava of the carbon. So Rabbi is concerned about accidentally eating the chadash. Continues the Gemara. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, certainly it was done with the consent of the chacham. There's no such concern. Says the Gemara. Apparently, v'loy kol gazer Rabbi Yehuda. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda is not chayshish, not concerned. Dilma sila meichel minei. Perhaps he's going to eat it b'shoigig. There's no such concern. So why, when it comes to chametz, is he concerned? Omar Rabba Shani Chadash. The Chadash is different. Why? Since you only allowed him to pick the new produce, the new grains, with a derech shino, you have to deviate from the norm. You can't use a tool, you have to pluck it by hand. Hu zacher? That keeps him mindful. It indicates that this is asur b'achila. Don't partake, don't eat this chadash. Therefore, Rida maintains there's no concern with processing the grains even before the Omer was brought. As opposed to chametz, where there's a very real concern with doing bedika at this point because you might find something and eat it. Amalei Abai. Teinach b'shas ktifa. That explains the moment of picking, because it's done differently, that indicates that it's us. Tchina v'harkada. What about the grinding, the sifting, which is done in typical fashion? Michael and Meimar, in that case, what indicator do you have which will prevent him, which will keep him mindful that it's asur? Says Mahola Kasha, the answer is like this. When it comes to grinding and sifting, he's going to deviate as well. Tchina berachai diyad. The grinding will be accomplished with a hand grinder as opposed to a watermill. Harkada, the sifting, will be done al gabe napa, on the back of a sifter. So since he's doing a shinoi, this will indicate that it's asur and prevent him from eating the new produce, the chadash. Says him, okay, elahadasnan, but what about the following Mishnah, which says, koitzrin beis hashalachim. We know that just as you may not eat the new produce, the new grains, before the Omer was brought on his Mizbeach, you may not even harvest the new grains. The pasuk says that the Omer is meant to be reishis kitzirchem, the first of your cutting. However, that only applies to cutting from a field which is suitable to be used for the Omer carbon. But if you have a field, a low grade, low quality field, where lechatchila you're not going to use it for the Omer, in that case, there's no concern with cutting from that field prior to the ktsira of the Omer. So what are examples of these types of low grade fields? You can cut, you can harvest, you can reap from a tired field, a field which doesn't suffice with sun rain, with rain, with natural rain. You have to go ahead and supplement it. So it's a tired, it's a thirsty field which doesn't produce high quality produce. Ushaba makim, or tvua, which grows in the valleys, which isn't high grade and high quality, so you can cut. You can't bundle. V'ukimna Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara elsewhere establishes that this Mishnah, which allows cutting before the Omer, is in line with Rabbi Yehuda's Shita. Now, if that's the case, Michael Lemema, how are you going to explain that Mishnah? Kaitzrin. You don't have to deviate. Take your sickle, your tool, and cut. So since there's no shina there, why aren't we concerned that he's going to eat it b'shogeg? Elam Abaye says Abaye, I'll explain it differently. We had a kasha. Why by chametz is Rabbi the concern that he might accidentally eat the chametz? By chodesh, it doesn't seem to have that concern. Says Abaye, there's a big difference. Difference is in attitude and mindset. Chodesh badamine. The new produce, the new grains, a person is accustomed to separating himself from that. He knows throughout the year that this is the thing he's about to separate from. It's not just a seasonal thing. So in that case, there's no concern that he's going to lunge into it, he's going to accidentally eat it. Because he's accustomed to having that aversion to it. However, chametz lebadamine, when it comes to chametz, it's something he eats throughout the entire year. It's a seasonal thing. It's just Pesach when it's us. So he might forget himself, and when he finds chametz through the bedika, he might actually eat it. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, Abaye's version of Rabbi Yehuda, mindset, attitude is what determines matters. Amarav. Let's analyze our discussion. We had a stira between Rabbi Yehuda by chametz, who's concerned, and by chodesh, who doesn't seem to be concerned. And you posed that question, and you attempted to answer it. Now, what about the other aspect? What about the chachamim? Why wasn't that a contradiction? Amarava, the Rabbi Yehuda kasha. Fine, you have a kasha from one Rabbi Yehuda and the other. The Rabban like kasha. That's not a kasha. We seem to have a contradiction between the chachamim. By chametz, we're not concerned about accidentally eating it. They allow you to do b'dika after chatzos. In contrast with chadash, where Rav Meir, who is one of the chachamim, is concerned about eating it b'shogeg. It doesn't allow you to process it before the Omer because you might eat it. So what about that stira? Says more Ella. You have to answer both of them. Ella, Rabbi Yehuda kasha. The kasha between both Rabbi Yehudas can be answered shaninan, as we just answered. The Rabbanan nami like kasha. The stira between the two Rabbanans also can be answered as follows. Generally, the Chacham are concerned that he might accidentally eat whatever he's involved with. Therefore, you can't process the chadash produce before the Omer. However, when it comes to chametz, that's an exception. You know why? What's he doing? He's being baidik chametz. He's trying to find the chametz to get rid of it. Who atzmai mechazer all of a sefer? Look, this fellow is looking for the chametz to burn it. Meichel ga'acham minei. He's going to eat it. He's heavily engaged in getting rid of it. He's pursuing the disposal of the chametz. Why in the world would he eat it? He's pretty mindful of the fact that it's asur. So we the chachamim are not concerned. So it's a special exception by chametz. Rav Ashi Amar, I'm going to answer the kasha differently. Rabbi Yehuda like kasha. The stira between Rabbi Yehuda by chametz, who's concerned about eating a b'shogeg, as opposed to by chadash, where he doesn't seem to be concerned. Like kasha can be answered as follows: Kemach v'koli tanan. The Mishnah says that after the Omer was brought, they would go out and find the markets of Yerushalayim filled with what? Kemach v'koli. There's some girsa which says Kemach koli tanan. Roasted flour which is inedible. You can't eat it. So there's no concern about accidental consumption. So certainly Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about eating something inadvertently. That's why he doesn't allow bedika after chatzos, but only if it's edible, as opposed to this kemach koli. Says the Gemara, that won't work. V'hadar of Asher B'dusi. B'dusi is a term of negation. It's just it's an expression. It's an unsubstantiated expression. Hadar of Asher, this answer B'dusi. It doesn't work. Why? Hateinach Mikoli Ve'elach. That will explain why there's no concern from the point of roasting onward, when it's inedible. What about up until that point? Mikara ad koli ma'ikal, from when you pick it until you roast it, it's edible. So why is there no concern about eating it b'shegeg? Perhaps you'll say, well, we only allow it when it's plucked by hand, which is a deviation, which indicates that it's asr, just as Rava suggested earlier. That explains the first Mishnah of Chadash, down on the bottom of Yuram and Beis, about the Shuki Yerushalayim. That explains that. But let's remember, we have another Mishnah of Chadash, that you can go be kaitzer the Beis HaShalachim, you can go reap the new crop. And in that case, there's no deviation whatsoever. Ela kaitzer Beis HaShalachim u'sheba mokim v'ukimin Rabbi Yehuda, which was established in line with Rabbi Yehuda's Shita, Michael Ameima. If he's doing it in typical fashion, just using a tool, a sickle, why would it be mutter? There's no deviation there. Elo de Rav Ashi B'dusi, apparently Rav Ashi's proposal won't work. Okay, so at this point, we had a contradiction between Chametz and Chadash. So we had Rabbi Yehuda's contradiction, Rabbanon's contradiction. The Rabbanon we had, because by B'dika they're not concerned, and by Chadash, they seem to be concerned. Don't process the new grains before the Omer was actually offered on the Mizbeach, because it's asr, you may actually eat it. And the Gemara tells us, generally the Chacham are concerned, but by Chametz, since he's pursuing the Chametz, he's trying to get rid of it, he's not going to eat it. Rabbi Yehuda's kasha was answered as well. It depends on the person's attitude. His mindset is what determines matters. Badal, is he accustomed to be separate from this thing? So when it comes to the Chadash, yes, he is. It's a year-long affair. He knows this is not something he's meant to eat before the Omer is brought on the Mizbeach. So in that case, no concern, as opposed to Chametz, where it's only a seasonal thing, it's only a Pesach thing. Perhaps he'll be forgetful, and while he's doing B'dika, eat that Chametz. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, mindset, attitude, badal, is a factor to reckon with. Says the Gemara, so you're going to say that wherever he's not accustomed to having an aversion to the thing, Migaz Rabbi Yehuda, is Rabbi Yehuda concerned about accidental consumption? About Tanan, we have a Mishnah, which seems to indicate otherwise. The Mishnah in Shabbos says, Lo yikav adam shvei feresh shel beitz. A person shouldn't puncture an eggshell. V'yimalenu shemen, fill it with oil, with nenu b'tzad haner, and place it on the side of the lamp. So ner is referring to the kli, which held the oil in the wick. B'shvil shetei min hatefes. Don't place this oil-filled eggshell next to the ner to drip into it and supply the ner with oil. B'shvil shetei min hatefes, so that would drip into the ner. V'afil shel cheres. Even if this kli is not an eggshell, it's a cheres, he shouldn't do it. The concern is that perhaps he's actually going to consume some of that oil in this eggshell, which is now supplying the flame. And if you remove some oil, it's going to weaken the flame, it's going to do a malach of mechaber. So there is a concern of accidental consumption, even if it's cheres. So the oil is sitting in a cheres, which is repulsive, where perhaps the concern of consumption wouldn't apply. No, even there we're concerned that he might actually pull out some oil. So that's the shita of Tanakam and the Chachamim. We're concerned about accidental consumption. Rabbi Yehuda Mater, he says no concern. You're not going to consume that shemen. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda is not choishish, and even in this case where it's just oil, and the person is not accustomed to separating himself from oil, it's loy badal. So why isn't Rabbi Yehuda concerned? Says the more there as well. There is a concept of badal. Why? Hasam mishum chumra de Shabbos, on account of the stringency of Shabbos, which Shabbos is a mitzvah which is held in such high regard by Klal Yisrael. On account of that high status, mivdal bedili, people are badal. They have that aversion. They'll be extra careful when it comes to Shabbos. Therefore, there's no concern of this fellow taking oil out of the supply. Says the Gemara, V'rami the Shabbos HaShabbos. Now we have a contradiction. A stira from a Mishnah concerning Shabbos onto a Brisa discussing Shabbos as well. So in the most recent Mishnah we learned that according to the Rabbanan, we're concerned about accidental consumption on Shabbos. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, Shabbos is something where a person takes extra care and he won't come to do something accidentally. We have a Brisa which seems to say otherwise. The Sanya Chevod Lisha Nifsak. Have a pail whose rope snapped. Lo Yehi Koishra. He may not tie the ends back together, rather he should form a bow. And we're not concerned that if he's going to make a bow, perhaps it's going to lead him to make a knot, which is a malach. Tanakama, the Chacham, are not choishish for this type of confusion. Rabbi Yehuda, you can't make a bow. Kayrach olav punda. You should wrap a belt, a psikya, or a band used to keep their socks up. So it's a personal item which he's going to need and remove sooner or later. And this will ensure that it's not going to remain there. It's not going to be a kesher shekayama. Ubavashli avena, provided he doesn't actually form a bow. The Gemara assumes at this point we're concerned that if we allow him to make a bow, it's going to lead him to make a knot. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about confusion even when it comes to Shabbos. Whereas the Chachamim are not concerned whatsoever. They allow him to make a bow. They're not concerned it's going to lead to a knot. And this is in contradiction with the previous Mishnah, where the Chachamim were concerned about accidental consumption, and Rabbi Yehuda said, "Oh, Shabbos, that's a different parsha. The person is badal. He won't come to confuse things." Kasha Rabbi Yehuda. We seem to have a contradiction between the most recent Rabbi Yehuda and the previous Rabbi Yehuda. Over here, he's concerned. Over there, he isn't. Kasha the Rabbanon. Likewise, we have a contradiction between the Rabbanon here, who are not concerned. They allow him to make a bow without concern it's going to lead him to a knot. Whereas in the earlier Mishnah, they didn't allow him to place that oil near the nair for concern they might consume that oil on Shabbos. It says the Rabbanon like kasha. The kasha between the Rabbanans can be answered like this: Shemen b'shemen michlef. The Chacham are only concerned when the two items are similar, but if they're dissimilar, there's no concern of confusion. So, oil and oil can be confused with one another. He sees oil in this container here. He might forget himself. Says oil is kosher. Nothing wrong with taking oil. He might not realize that it's supplying the flame. So there's very real concern of confusion. However, aniva b'kshira lemichlef. When it comes to making a bow is dissimilar to a knot. Two separate entities. There's no concern about confusing one with the other. That's why they allow him to form a bow without concern it's going to lead him to make a knot. So that explains the Rabbanan. The Rabbi Yehuda like kasha, likewise, a steer between both Rabbi Yehudas can be answered as follows. All the Rabbi Yehuda says that when it comes to Shabbos, a person has the right attitude. He's badal. He's extra careful. If that's the case, why can't he make a bow? Time of the Rabbi Yehuda, it's not because we're concerned that if he does a bow, it might lead him to make a knot. Ella, mishum de kasavar, aniva gufa. Kshiri. Rabbi Yehuda holds that forming a bow is tantamount to making a knot. It has a din of kasher. That's why you can't do it. Nothing to do with gzera. It's unrelated to confusion and concerns. Says the Gemara, V'rami Rabban ad Rabban. Now we're going to have a stira between the Rabbanon, who told us that we can go ahead and make that bow to put together the rope for that pail. So we're not concerned about Gzera here. In contrast to the next Mishnah, where we have a Rabbanon who seem to be concerned when it comes to forming a knot. This knot, Koshrin Dliba Psik. Once again, this pail has this rope that snapped. So you can go ahead and use a psikya, this garment, this band, and tie it onto the pail. Why? Because sooner or later it's going to remove it. And in which case, it won't be a permanent knot. We can't use a rope because he might leave it there. And result in a kesher shel kayam, a permanent knot being formed. So according to the Tanakam, the Chacham were concerned about confusion. As we're going to see soon. Rabbi Yehuda Mater, it allows them to use a chevel. Says more, what type of rope are we speaking about? Chevel demai. We're speaking about a typical standard rope. Rabbi Yehuda matter? How can we say Rabbi Yehuda allows you to tie that rope on the pail? Kesher shel kayamu. It's going to be a permanent knot. The vade asal of tuli. He's suddenly going to leave it there for all time. How can Rabbi Yehuda allow? It's a malach elapshita. Apparently, we're speaking about the gardi, a weaver's rope, which he needs for his work, for his profession. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, since it's something he's going to take sooner than later, it's not going to remain there for all time, there's no concern of kesher shel kayam. It's only a temporary knot. Says Rabbi Yehuda, who doesn't apply Gzera. However, the Rabbanon seem to be concerned. V'gaz Rabbanon, chevel de gardi, atu chevel de alma. Why don't the Rabbanon allow him to use this chevel de gardi, which is going to remove from that pail? Because the concern, if we allow this, it may lead him to actually use a standard rope, which will result in a malach, kesher shel kayama, going to leave it there for all time. So what do we see? That the Rabbanan, in this case, apply Gzera. You can't use this rope on account of the other rope. In contrast with the earlier Bryce, which told us that, according to Rabbanan, you can make a bow. There's no concern that it can lead a person to make a knot. Why that discrepancy? Why we guys here or not there? Says the Gemara, yes, there's a difference. Chevel bechevel michlef. Certainly one type of rope can be confused with the other type of rope. So if we allow the weaver's rope to be used, it may lead him to use an ordinary rope, which can result in a kesher shel kayam. We're going to leave it there for all time. However, when it comes to a bow, aniva b'kshira lo michlefa. Nobody confuses a bow with a knot. It's a different arrangement, a different style. Therefore, there's no concern, there's no room for confusion, and the Chacham allow one to make a bow without any concern that it will lead to a kesher shel kayam. Okay, let's pause for just a moment. So we had chametz, we had chadash, we had several cases regarding Shabbos, the oil of the ner, we had the bow, and finally the different types of rope. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the chametz poses a concern because the person is not accustomed to being buddled from it throughout the entire year. However, when it comes to chadash, he's accustomed to being buddled, and therefore there's no concern. Likewise, when it comes to Shabbos, there's a chumrah de Shabbos, which keeps a person aware and careful. When it comes to the aniva, it's nothing to do with the gzeira. Rabbi Yehuda says, aniva is like a kesher. The Chachamim hold that chametz doesn't pose a concern. Because, look, he's trying to get rid of it. He's going to eat it. However, when it comes to chadash, they're concerned that perhaps he's going to confuse matters. He sees grain, he sees wheat, and accidentally will eat it. When it comes to the oil on Shabbos as well, he may go ahead and consume that oil. When it comes to the ropes, we don't allow a chevel de gardi, which doesn't really pose a true concern because it's not a kesher shel kayam, for concern that he might actually use a standard rope which can turn into kesher shel kayam. Why do they allow the bow? Because a bow and a knot are two different entities and there's no concern of confusion. Continues the Gemara. So you mean to say that wherever a person is bottled, is accustomed to separating himself from the item, there's no concern of consuming it and getting overly involved. We learned in a brayso, we have a bechor, which is kaddish. You may not make a mum in that bechor. What if it has this condition, abundance of dam, which actually can lead to death? Even if it's going to result in the animal dying, you can't let some blood out of it. He doesn't even allow even to let blood in a manner where you're not making a mum. So you can't do irreversible damage to the animal. That's called making a mum. But let's say you do it in a manner where it's not going to create a permanent mum. Even in that case, the reader says, don't get involved. Why? Exera. We have a concern if we allow him to do it in this manner, he might actually go ahead and make a mum as well. So you see that even when it comes to bukhar, which is a carbon, where certainly a person doesn't engage in carbonates, he's bothered from it. We're concerned about over-involvement. He can go ahead and let out some blood, provided he's careful. not to inflict a mum. So why is Rabbi Yehuda concerned when it comes to something like this, hegdish, from which he's badal? We actually learned this the other day, that when you have chametz in your home, there's no concern. If you find chametz of hegdish in your home, on the Vav Amenal, there's no concern because mivdal b'dili and sheminei, you don't even have to cover it. So why is Rabbi Yehuda concerned over here? Says him over there, it's a unique situation. A person is desperate, is anxious. Look, his animal's about to die. Due to the fact that a person is anxious regarding his property, he's desperate. In that case, we have a real concern. Perhaps he'll get overly involved. Amrina, we say, if you allow him to do the hakaza in a location, in the animal where it doesn't inflict a mum, he might get overly involved, overly anxious. He might actually go ahead and do it in a way where it makes a mum. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, this type of situation, full of anxiety and desperation, don't get involved. Rabbanan, on the other hand, they hold just the opposite, reverse psychology. Kolishke, certainly, if you're not going to allow it at all, if you paint a broad brush and say everything is awesome, even if you're not going to make a move, you can't get involved. You know what's going to happen? He's going to disregard it, he's going to write us off. Due to the fact that he's anxious to save his property, to save his animal, he's going to completely negate us. He's going to do it even in a manner where a mum is going to be created. Why? Because if we don't allow anything, he's going to bust. Then he'll say, look, everything is usher in any case. There's no difference whether I do it in this manner or in that manner. He's not going to be careful any longer. And perhaps he's going to even make a mum. Therefore, say the Chachamim, better to allow a limited allowance. Do it, but be careful that you don't form a mum. That will ensure that indeed he'll comply and he won't make a mum. So two sides of the coin. Rabbi Yehuda says, a case where a person is bold, is anxious and desperate, we don't want to allow him near his animal because perhaps he's going to get so engrossed and do it even in a manner where it's usher. As the Chacham say, you can't push it too far. If you're going to disallow everything, you're going to create such severe restrictions, he's going to bust. He's not going to listen to us, he's going to get everything. In that case, he'll figure, look, I'm doing it anyways, then may as well do it even if it creates a mum. He's not going to differentiate. So, this whole discussion doesn't really pertain to our Gemara because it's a different type of case of Adam Bo, which has its own factors. Continues the Gemara. Okay, continuing on the same topic. Is that so that according to Rabbi Yehuda, in a case where it might entail financial loss, a person has heightened anxiety, and we're very concerned. We don't allow anything because it can lead to Isser. Is that so? Vatnan, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein mekadrin habehema b'yamtiv. One may not scrape down his behema to remove the dirt, to rejuvenate the animal, to maintain its health. You can't do that on Yom Tov. Because by using this sharp comb, he's going to inflict a wound on his animal. But you can use a wide-toothed comb to accomplish the same thing, because that won't make a chabura. So what do we see here? That even if it involves maintaining the health of one's animal, we don't say that he's going to be overly anxious and desperate, and if you allow him to use this type of comb, it's going to lead him to use a different type of comb. We don't say that. Not only can't you use the sharp comb, and you can't even use the wide comb, because they're concerned if we allow this, perhaps he's going to go ahead and use the other comb as well. Vatanya, we learned in the Brisa, Ezeu Kidur ve'ezeu Kirtzuf. What exactly are these terms, Kidur and Kirtzuf? Kidur means Ktanim ba'ism Chabura. This comb has these narrow, these sharp teeth, which inflict a wound. Kirtzuf is Gdoilim, large, wide teeth. Ba'ism Chabura, they don't make a Chabura. So how does this work? Why when it comes to Bechar, does the reader say, you can't even do hakaza, you can't let blood, even if it's not going to make a mum, because Adam Bolam Amayah, due to his anxiety, he might go ahead and get overly involved and make a chabura, make a mum. In contrast to this most recent mission, where Rav Yehuda allows him to use a properly designed comb to remove the dirt, to rejuvenate the animal, to maintain its health. And we're not concerned that he's going to get overly involved and use the sharp comb as well. So there's a difference between both situations. Hasam, in the case of the Bechor, who's suffering an ailment, he has too much blood, which can lead him to Misa. Hasam, the Shabakle Mais. In that case, should he leave him alone as is, without treating him, he would perhaps die. Amrinon Adam Bolam. We say, well, a person gets over anxious and is desperate when it comes to that, and he wants to maintain his property, and perhaps he's going to get too involved and make a mum. Hacha, as opposed to our case where we're not dealing with such a serious condition. Ish Shavak, if you just leave him as is, Tzara Ba'almahu. It's really going to result in an uncomfortable situation for the animal, but not to the point of death. So this owner is not so desperate. We don't say Adam Bol, a person is so desperate and it can lead him to get so overly involved and do malacha. That's why when it comes to the Bechor, we're so concerned, as opposed to the scrubbing down of the behemoth. Says the Gemara. Okay, but one more thing. Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'ishna gabe chametz de Gaza. Why is it when it comes to chametz, he says you can't do b'dika after chatzos, because he might find some bread and mistakenly eat it. He might think it's matzah, whatever. As opposed to the scrubbing down the animal, where we say, well, things won't get confused. He can use this comb, not the other. Over there, he applies exer. Over here, he's not concerned that if we allow this type of comb, it can lead him to use the other type of comb. That's more lechem belechem michlef. Different types of breads can be confused with each other. Perhaps if this fellow is doing badik and he finds something, he might think that it's matzah. He won't realize that it's chametz. Therefore, we're concerned about accidental consumption. As opposed to our case, kidur bekirtzev lemichlef. The sharp combing and the other combing where it doesn't entail a chabura, the kirtzev with the wide teeth, those two things are so distinct and separate, there's no room for confusion, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no gzera. Rashi points out that apparently, according to Chachamim, we do say michlef. The two types of combs, two types of methods can be confused with each other, and therefore they say we can't even allow the wide-toothed comb because it may lead him to do the same thing with a sharp comb as well. Okay, so in conclusion, we have the Shitas Rabbanon who say we're concerned in a case where it's michlef, where things can be confused one with the other. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says there's another factor as well. Yeah, when things can be confused, then we have to make a gzera, but that's only when the person is loy badal. He doesn't have the attitude of separation from that item. Only then do we have a concern. But if he has a natural aversion to it, he's accustomed to being badal from it, then there's no concern. So we have many cases. Let's try to go through all of them. We have chametz. We're going to the Chachamim. There's no gzera there because, although generally we're concerned about confusion, over here, since he's looking for the chametz to go burn it, he's involved in disposing of the chametz, he's not going to eat it. In the case of the chadash produce, yeah, we're concerned there. Of confusion, we can't let him get involved in processing the chadash grains before the omer. Perhaps he'll inadvertently eat it, he'll think it's kosher. When it comes to the shemen near the ner, there as well, perhaps he'll accidentally go take that shemen. When it comes to the aniva, they say you can make a bow because there's no concern it's going to lead him to make a knot. A knot is not a bow. However, when it comes to using the rope, even if it's a weaver's rope, we're concerned in michlef that he might not differentiate between this type of rope and a standard rope, which can result in a kesher shel kayama, being that it's left there for all time. We learned that a person can go ahead and do hakaza for the b'chor. Why? Because a person is anxious. And if you don't allow him anything, he's going to breach things, negate us completely, and actually do a mum on that b'chor. Therefore, we allow him to do it, provided that there's no mum involved. And finally, according to the Chachamim, you can't even go ahead and scrub down an animal using a wide tooth comb because michlef, it can be confused with a sharp comb. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that in addition to the michlef factor, we also have to have the loy badal factor present. So only where he's not accustomed to separating from it, then we have a concern. Therefore, as follows: when it comes to chametz, he's not badal from chametz throughout the year, so we're concerned that he might eat it. Therefore, don't do bediki after chatzos. As opposed to chadash, as opposed to the new produce over there, it's something that's all year round. He's accustomed to separating. There's no concern of getting involved in the chadash because he won't eat it. Likewise, anything pertaining to Shabbos, due to the chumrah de Shabbos, a person is accustomed to being careful, and therefore you can have that oil drip into the nair. There's no concern of consumption. Likewise, when it comes to the chevel, there's no concern of confusing this type of chevel with the other, because it involves Shabbos, as opposed to the aniva halacha, where it's also because, very simply, aniva is a kshira contra Rabbi Yehuda. When it comes to bechor, we don't allow him to get involved whatsoever due to his anxiety and his desperation. He might go ahead and actually make a mum. And finally, when it comes to combing down the animal, we're not dealing with such a serious health issue. There's no anxiety there. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, make sure to do it right. Use a comb which doesn't inflict a wound. And we don't say that if we allow this, it's going to lead him to do a scrubbing down with a sharp comb, because the two things are discernible one from another. Continues the Mishnah. Rabbi Omer, Oichlim kol chamish. We know that minat Torah, one stops eating chametz at chatzos. Midrabban, they were concerned, perhaps people miscalculate the hours, the minutes, and therefore they pushed back the Zman Isser. How far back? We have machlekes. Rameya says 1 hour back. Rabbi Yehuda says 2 hours. Rameya Omer Oichlim kol chamish. One eats chametz for the first 5 hours of Erev Pesach. So let's say Erev Pesach is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So up until 11 o'clock. And that's when you begin Streifas Chametz. We push back the Isser 1 hour. Because we're concerned that perhaps a person will miscalculate. He'll think it's merely 11 o'clock and it's really already 12 o'clock. Therefore you have to stop at 11. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Oichon kol arba. You eat the first 4 hours up until 10 o'clock. V'tolim kol chamish. The next hour, you're in limbo. You don't eat, but you can still have anah, which is not so chamer like eating. And at 11 o'clock you begin this reif. There were 2 chales of the toida carbon which were puzzle. Munachos al gav or al gav haitzba, which was situated, placed on the top of a platform on the harabai, so it would be visible for all. And this was an indicator of the soif zman achila and the zman streif, as follows: Kol zman shabonachos, as long as both chales were present, kolam oichlam, everybody would eat their chametz. This would indicate that it's still within the time frame of heter achilas chametz. Nitla achas, once one of the chalas had been removed, the bezdin would send a shliach to remove it. That was an indication that the 5th hour has arrived. Toilin, now they would just wait. Loy oichlam, loy surfin, they wouldn't eat, nor would they burn. Nitla shtein, once they noticed both chalas had been removed, his chilu kol am surfin all began to do streifas chametz. This indicated that the 6th hour has arrived. Rav Gamliel Omer, well, it depends what we're speaking about. Chulin, ne'cholin kol arba. Chulin would be eaten for the first 4 hours of Erev Pesach. We're speaking about the chametz, of course. But then you must stop. Truma, however, when it comes to truma, we're not meant to dispose of truma necessarily. So over there we allow you another hour. With truma kol chamesh, we add the 5th hour as well. However, when it comes to 11 o'clock, we burn everything because, as Rashi says, most people can confuse things. 1 hour is easy to miscalculate, and therefore when it comes 11 o'clock, whether it's chulin or truma, you must burn it. Of course, this is midrabanan. Tanan Hasan. We learned a Mishnah elsewhere in Masechah Sanhedrin, a similar topic of confusing hours and days pertaining to the testimony of Eidos. So we have Echad Omer b'shnayim b'chodesh. We have 2 Eidim that came to Bezdin, speaking about Reuven killing Shimon. So one Eid said like this: b'shnayim b'chodesh. This event occurred on the 2nd day of the month. V'echad Omer b'shloisha. And the second fellow says, well, it took place on the 3rd day of the month. Now, of course, they're both saying that it occurred on Wednesday. But he says Wednesday was a Beis Nisan, and he says it was Gimel Nisan. Eidus and Kayemes. We maintain their testimony. We don't view it as a contradiction. Why? Because we have a very easy way of explaining that discrepancy. They're both referring to the same event on the same day. Why is he saying 2? He's saying 3. This fellow, the fellow that's saying it happened on the 2nd day of Nisan, is aware of the fact that last month was a leap month. It was a 30-day month, in which case, now it's only the second day of the next month. However, his friend was unaware of the fact that last month was a 30-day month, in which case he thinks it's already the third of the following month. So that explains the discrepancy. We reconcile the difference, and we don't view it as a contradiction. However, hey, now we have trouble. If one says it occurred on the third day of the month, and the other one says on the fifth day, a 2-day difference, now we have no way of explaining it. Eidus and Batela. Their Eidus is nullified, because we have a contradiction. One of them is being untruthful. Continues the Mishnah. What about the discrepancy regarding the time of day? First person says it occurred 2 hours into the day. The other one says it occurred 3 hours into the day. So what happens then? Their Eidus is perfectly valid. Why? Because the Gemara will explain, we have a way of explaining it. That it's really just based on miscalculation, perhaps. And therefore, they're both speaking about the same event, and there's no difference between them. However, if one says it occurred on the third hour, and the other one says it occurred on the fifth hour, in this case it's batel, because the gap between them is too wide to bridge. One of them is speaking untruthfully. So according to Meir, if it's only 1 hour discrepancy, 2 and 3, you're okay. If it's 3 and 5, a 2 hour difference, then it's batel. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eidus and Kayemus. Even if it's 3 and 5, a 2 hour difference, the Eidus is Kayem. However, should one fellow say it occurred 5 hours into the day, and the other one says it occurred 7 hours into the day, Eidus and Batela. According to all Shis, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, it will be batel. Why? Because there's no way to confuse these two things. Because at hour number 5, where is the sun? In the east. Ubesheva, chama b'marav. Where is the sun during the 7th hour? On the west. Therefore, there's no way to reconcile this discrepancy. They can't be speaking about the same thing. If he's saying he saw the sun in the east, it occurred at hour 5, and he's speaking about hour 7 where the sun is in the west, apparently, either speaking about different events or one of them is lying. Continues the Gemara. When you'll delve into matters and you'll attempt to explain the basis for the machlekes, you'll come up with the following explanation. According to Ramesh Shita, we assume that the Edom that come to Bezdin and give us testimony, they're accurate, they're being precise in their presentation. If they would have any doubt as to the accuracy of what they're saying, they wouldn't come and present it. We have to assume that these Edom don't miscalculate at all. Their description, their presentation is precise and accurate. However, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a person can sometimes miscalculate a half hour. Explains the Gemara. According to Meir, we assume that there's no mistake taking place whatsoever. So I'm going to explain, I'm going to reconcile the different versions. He's saying it took place hour 2, he's saying hour 3. I'm going to explain that if there's no miscalculation that occurred. As follows. Masaki Hava, because the actual story occurred b'meipek tarti, when the 2nd hour left, u'ma'ayel klas, when the 3rd hour arrived, meaning right at that midpoint, where the 2nd met the 3rd, that's when the event took place. And that explains the various versions of these Edom. So this fellow who said it occurred on the 2nd hour, b'seish time, he's referring to the end, the very end, the last moment of hour 2. The person who said it took place on the 3rd hour, b'tchilas shalish, he's referring to the first moment of the 3rd. They're both speaking at the same exact moment. The event took place exactly between the 2nd and the 3rd, at that very moment, and they're both referring to the same thing. He's merely referring to it as the end of the 2nd. He's referencing it as the first of the 3rd, at the first moment of the 3rd. So that's why the Eidus is Kai. Rabbi Yehuda, however, Adam Toya Chatzisha. We can say that a person, miscalculates by around a half hour. That's going to explain the versions presented by the Edom as follows. Ma'asa ki hava, the actual story took place be'palgo de arbahav, halfway into the 4th hour. At 3.5, that's when the event took place. V'adikam sholish. So that explains matters, because the fellow who's saying it took place on the 3rd, b'soif sholish. He's referring to the last moment of the 3rd, which is a half hour prior to the actual event, because toi palga de shata l'kamei. He's miscalculating a half hour ahead. So he's referencing the last moment of the 3rd hour, and he's making some mistake here. He's miscalculating. He thought that the event took place then, but really it was a half hour later. So he's advancing it by a half hour. He's saying 3 instead of 3.5. And likewise, the fellow who's speaking about the 5th hour, b'tchilas chomish, he's referring to the first moment of that 5th, which is a half hour off reality. And he's miscalculating a half hour behind it, meaning he thinks it's already a half hour later than it really is. That explains matters. That's why we can reconcile the different versions of the Edom, so that it doesn't appear as a contradiction. They're both referring to the same moment. According to Rameir, we can say that there was no tos whatsoever. They're both referring to the same moment, and there's no miscalculation whatsoever. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there must be some sort of miscalculation, but not more than a half hour. Continues the Gemara, Ika de Amri Amar Abaye is actually another version of Abaye, because the first version is a bit difficult. We're working with the notion that the event occurred exactly at midpoint between the 2nd and the 3rd, which is a bit difficult. Chances are that it took place a bit off that center point. So the second version will adopt that approach. When you'll delve into the discussion here, it'll come up as follows. According to Rameir, a person can miscalculate somewhat, just a little bit. According to Rabbi Yehuda, a person can miscalculate an hour plus a bit. Explains the Gemara. According to Rameir, just a small miscalculation is committed. And that explains the discrepancy here. When did the event take place? Either at the end of the 2nd hour, or at the beginning of the 3rd. Not at the point where they meet. A little bit off that point, at the end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd. And that explains matters. One of these Edom had some small minor mistake here. So let's say the event took place in the beginning of the 3rd hour. So the fellow who's speaking about the 2nd hour is making a bit of a toss, a mashu. He's a bit off. Or if it took place at the end of the 2nd, so the person who's referencing the 3rd hour is a bit off. Rabbi Yehuda, however, According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to say that a person can miscalculate an hour plus a bit, because he's allowing even Eidos where one Eid is saying hour 3, the other one saying hour 5. You can only reconcile that contradiction by saying that a person can miscalculate an hour plus. How's that? Ma'asaki hava, the actual event occurred either towards the end of the 3rd hour or somewhere in the beginning of the 5th hour. Let's assume that one of them miscalculated an hour and a bit. So let's say the event actually took place at the end of the 3rd hour. So the person who's speaking about the 5th hour is just an hour and a bit off. Or if the event took place at the beginning of the 5th, let's assume that the fellow who's referencing the 3rd, which is the end of the 3rd, let's say, is just an hour and a bit off the actual event. This justifies the versions and is mekayim the edus. Okay, so in summary, we learned that min Torah, one stops eating chametz at Chatzois Erev Pesach. However, midrabban, we're concerned about miscalculations. The sundial is not so visible on a cloudy day, so Chachamim created a safeguard. The question is, how far back do they push the zman? According to Rameir, you eat for the first 5 hours and then you stop. According to Rabbi Yehuda, only 4 hours. According to Gamliel, it depends. Chulin, you have 4 hours. When it comes to Truma, we give you an extra hour. Then we'll proceed with a similar discussion regarding confusions and miscalculations. So we have 2 Edom here. And there's a discrepancy between them. So if it pertains to the day of the month, one Eid is speaking about the 2nd day of the month, The other ate about the third day of the month. In this case, we say it's okay because, let's assume, it's a result of ignorance. The fellow who's speaking about the second day of the month is unaware of the fact that last month was a leap month. So this justifies the discrepancy and the edus is kind. However, if the gap is wider than that, he mentions the third day of the month, he mentions the fifth day, there's no way to explain that. It's a contradictory edus and it's possible. If the discrepancy pertains to hours, then look, it's like this. If one speaks about the second hour and the other one about the third hour, it's okay. If it's 3 and 5, then we have machlekes. According to our mayor, it's batal. It's too wide of a gap to explain and to justify. According to Rabbi Yehuda here as well, it is kosher because we explain it based on a miscalculation. All agree if one is speaking about the fifth hour, the other one about the seventh, there's no way to explain that. There's no way to reconcile that because it's clearly visible that there's a contradiction here. During the fifth hour, the sun is in the east. During the seventh hour, the sun is in the west. So apparently they're both not speaking about the same event. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. We learned that when things are similar to each other, there's concern for mix-up and confusion. The Chachamim were concerned that perhaps we'll do something wrong. So let's go down that list. We have Shittas Chachamim who say that michlaf, things that are similar, that creates the concern. That's the determinant here. But when it comes to searching for chametz after chatzos, there's no concern because he's looking to find the chametz to burn it. He's not going to eat it. However, when it comes to processing the chadash, the new produce, then we don't allow it because michlaf, it's so similar to everything else, and he may accidentally eat it before the appropriate time. He can't place the oil to drip into the ner because he might go ahead and consume it on Shabbos. He can't use the chevel, even if it's a weaver's rope, which is not meant to stay there for all time because it can lead him to use an ordinary rope. He can go ahead and make a bow because that's not similar to a knot. He can go ahead and make a hakazas hadam on the bukhar in a manner which doesn't present a mum because the person is over anxious. If you don't allow him to do anything, then he's going to do everything wrong. And finally, you can't go ahead and comb that animal using even a comb which doesn't present a chabura concern because it's so similar to the other comb and one thing may lead to the next. Rabbi Yehuda says, look, michlaf, things that are similar and can be confused one with the other is a concern, but I have an additional factor as well, which must be reckoned with. A personal attitude factor. So only if a person is loy badl, is not accustomed to being separate from that thing, then we're concerned. But otherwise, there's no concern of accidental engagement. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to chametz, we're concerned because that's not something which is accustomed to separating from throughout the year. So don't do b'dikas chametz after chatzos, you might eat it. When it comes to processing chadash, there's no concern because from that he's separate. When it comes to anything relating to Shabbos, like the oil or like that rope, he's buddled because of chumrah de Shabbos. You can't make a bow because that itself is considered a knot. You may not let blood out of the bukhar because a person is overly anxious, and he may go ahead and actually make a mum. You can go and comb the animal using a wide-toothed comb, which is dissimilar to a sharp comb. We learned in the Mishnah that Menat Torah, chametz is asur from chatzos. The chacham create a safeguard due to possible confusion. According to our mayor, he pushed back 1 hour. According to Rabbi Yehuda, 2 hours. According to Rabbi Gamliel, chulin 2 hours. Shumah 1 hour. We proceeded with the Gemara, but there was a discrepancy between the Edom. And the Gemara concluded when we can go ahead and figure things out, reconcile their various versions in a manner where it doesn't present a contradiction, we do so, and the Eidos is kind.